Good afternoon. I'm sitting here with Father David White, and a lot of parishioners haven't seen you in a while, Father, and so I thought it would be nice to do a little interview to kind of catch up and also to just tell people where you've been and everything else. I guess we'll jump right in. So before you were a priest, what occupations did you have?
Well, thank you for asking me to be here, David. It's always good to come back here to the Merrimack Valley to Blessed Trinity Parish now, right?
Yeah, in a couple weeks.
A couple of weeks, okay. And the churches of St. Anne and St. Catherine, where I really spent...
You almost didn't remember St. Catherine's there.
where I spent 10 good years as a priest. And I really consider this Blessed Trinity Parish in just a few weeks will be my spiritual home. It was a very good 10 years, and as I say, it's always good to be back. So, to specifically answer your question, after college...
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Northeastern College. I was a liberal arts major.
5 years?
Yes, majored in biology and chemistry, and I thought about medical school, but I really just didn't have the grades, so.
The fifth year is an internship in there somewhere. Where did you work?
Well, I worked in some various hospital laboratories. I worked in a pharmacy for a couple of semesters, so both interesting jobs, you know. So after I graduated, I went to a job fair in one of the big hotels in Boston, and I was just looking around, and I was attracted to one end of the exhibits, and there was all kinds of flashing lights and noise, and so I went down, and it was recruiters from the United States Marine Corps, and it was for men and women who might think they'd like to be an officer. So I got the information, and...
Is that ROTC?
No, this was after college. It's what they call OCS, Officer Candidate School. So after a while, I got interested. I applied. I passed the physical and the mental tests, and I spent the next 4 years in the United States Marine Corps.
So how old were you when you went in?
Let's see, I was 22 when I entered,
Wow.
and 26 when I left. So about 9 months of schooling in Quantico, Virginia, right outside of Washington. I spent 1 year overseas in the Orient, and then 2 years in Albany, Georgia, where they have a big supply depot. So 4 interesting years. And after I got discharged, again, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought about the seminary and priesthood, but I don't know, the time wasn't just right. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather were both Boston police officers, and my 2 brothers were state troopers. My father was a Boston firefighter, so city service was really, public service was really in the blood. So I took the police exam, I did well, and I started in 1979 as a police officer, and then 1981 I got laid off, if people remember, during Proposition 2.5. So that was almost a year I was laid off, and what I did was I went back to school, doubled up on my classes, and I got my master's degree. So in public administration. So, and when you had a master's degree, you got more money. So when we came back on the police after about a year, I got more money, and I did well, and I got several promotions. So, but I had always thought in the back of my mind about the seminary and the priesthood. So an interesting story is that when I turned 35, I took the day off from work, and I got the mail, and in it was a postcard from the Archdiocese of Boston. And on the back, it just had one sentence. It said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a priest? If so, contact this number." And when I read it, something just clicked, and I said, I have to get this question answered. So I said to myself, I'll give myself 3 years in this discernment process. So I started going on some retreats, I got active.
All the while, your career being a police officer.
Right. I was still on the Boston Police, and weekends and nights, and I attended some retreats, and one summer I went to Guatemala in Central America with the Marino Fathers, a missionary order. Then the next summer, I spent 2 weeks in Philadelphia in a very, very poor area with the Franciscan Fathers, and as I say, going on some retreats and things like that.
And this was all during the discernment process for you.
Right. And I was amazed. My parish priest gave me a book on different religious orders, and it must have been 2 inches thick. And I had no idea there were so many different religious groups and orders, and each has a different charism. Some were teachers, some were missionaries, some were medical, some worked with children. And nothing seemed to really click. And the last place I went was Pope John's National Seminary in Weston, Massachusetts, and it was for delayed or second career vocations. And I went there for a weekend. I met some of the seminarians there. I talked to some of the faculty, the sisters and the priests, and it just can't do that with my arthritis anymore, but it just seemed to click. And I said, this is the place for me. So I applied.
So this is 3 or 4 years into your career.
It's about
as a
2.5
police
years
officer.
into the process. So I said, this is it. I'm going to apply. I got accepted, and the rest is history. So
Wow. Now, prior to that, making that commitment, had you had any relationships and going on? I'm sure you went on dates and so forth, being a single guy.
Well, yes. I'd say I had 2 serious relationships with women, and I know I love them, and I think they love me, but again, we have to do things we think are best and at the right time for us. And the first one just didn't seem to, after a couple of years, didn't work out. And then the second one, who we really talked a lot about getting married, I remember a couple of weeks before I was ordained, we went out to lunch and we're walking along the beach in Quincy, Wollaston Beach, and I said, how come we didn't get married? And she looked at me and kind of had a tear in her eye, and she said, I think God wanted you more than I did. So what can you say to something like that?
Yeah.
So now I buried her mother and father. I did she had been married before her husband had died, and I did the wedding of a few of her children and baptized a few of her grandchildren. So she has since got married and lives in Florida. So
Great. Now, I know, like in Father Peter's case, he's had uncles that were priests, and I think maybe an aunt who was a nun. So he's had religious career people around him. And Father Joe actually was influenced by Father Peter, as we know. Did you have anyone in your life that influenced you in that way?
well, I had an aunt who spent over 50 years as a sister of Notre Dame de Mure, and then I had a cousin who was a Franciscan missionary, Mary. And I had spoken to both of them, and they invited me up to their places to, come for a weekend, see what religious life was to them. And then when I went to visit one weekend with my aunt, who was a sister of Notre Dame, she said, I know you don't remember this, but when you were very young, just as a baby, your parents brought you to visit me. And what I did with every newborn baby in the family, I took you and I brought you up to the altar, and I put you on the altar. And that was an old custom that people would do. They would offer their child up to God. And when we read the Gospels, when we read the Bible, that Jesus was brought to the temple and all. So much of our Catholic faith is really built on the Jewish tradition. So, and I was the only one that had a vocation as a priest, and my cousin, who became the Franciscan missionary Mary, she was the only one that became a nun. So, did that have some impact, effect? Who knows? So,
you mentioned you were here at St. Catherine's and St. Anne's for about 10 years. And do you have any, I'm sure you have some funny experiences knowing Father Peter and Father Joe. And even during this interview, I'm like picturing these things that Father Peter would say when you're trying to be serious. So do you have anything you can share with everyone?
Let's start at the beginning. Whenever a priest is new in a parish, the first weekend in the homily, they usually tell a little about themselves, their background, education, where they've been, and things of that nature. So, the first weekend I was here, I was doing the family mass, and the custom was to invite the children up around the altar. So I did that, and in my very brief homily, I said, "Does anybody know what I was before I became a priest?" And somebody said, "A police officer." I said, "That's right, that's right." And then I asked, "What do police officers do?" And this is why you never ask a question unless you know the answer. Some young child in the back yelled out, "They eat donuts." And as you can imagine, just like you, the whole congregation just burst out laughing. And I waited a minute or so and tried to continue the homily. No, couldn't do it, they're still laughing. Waited another minute, they're still laughing. So I said, "That's it, homily's over." So, one of the staff members, Denise, a week or so later got me a shirt. It showed some police officers chasing a donut truck. And I was working out at the gym, and I had a young mother come up to me and said, "Hey, Father, you trying to work off some of those donuts?" And all. So that was my first weekend experience.
Your first weekend.
And you really just have to go with the flow. I mean, God bless children. Linkletter had a show, children say the darndest things, and they certainly do. So.
What about Father Peter? He says the darndest things.
Well, Father Peter, I think, is just a big grown-up child and all. And he likes to kid and he likes to laugh, and he'll be the first one to laugh at himself too. So.
Yeah.
But he's a very big kidder, and I think anyone that knows him knows how comical he can be. But at the same time, when it's time to be serious and maybe be a little strict and all, he does that. So
yeah,
he's very professional. But it's so much better if we can laugh at ourselves and we can smile rather than maybe be frowning or constantly with a scowl on our face, or maybe look at the glass as being half full rather than half empty. So,
well, thank you so much. I think people are going to enjoy this interview, and welcome back to your home.
Thank you. And if I could just say one moment too, I've been sick for the last 7 or 8 months, and I had about 10 visits to the hospital for infections, and I had COVID, then I had a kidney out. And during this time, parishioners of St. Anne's and St. Catherine's, thank you for the many cards and spiritual bouquets and gifts. People sent baked goods, flowers, plants, emails, but especially your prayers. I'm really appreciative of that, and I thank you all very much.